Hi, my name is Morgan McCray, and I serve as Phi Theta Kappa's Eta Omega Chapter Vice President. I am excited to share with you Part 1 of Copiah-Lincoln Community College's Oral History. This project was made possible through a grant from the Mississippi Humanities Council with support from the National Endowment for the Humanities. Co-Lin, as a college is affectionately known, is rich in history and tradition, and it is important to document its place in history through the eyes and stories of those who experienced Co-Lin. Today, you will hear from former college presidents, former students, and instructors regarding their firsthand experience while at Co-Lin.
I came to Co-Lin in 1952 as a student, and I had just graduated from high school that year. In fact, Miss, I came up in the summertime and we worked on the campus and painted and did things like that in the dormitory. And it was great years. We were close people. There were probably 500 people here. At the time, the high school was here. The Western High School was Copiah-Lincoln High School. And we had kids that came from all around, from Prentice and Jeff Davis County, other counties. They came here, lived in the dormitory, went to high school, and graduated here, and then went to college, and then went on to university or someplace wherever they were going. But it was a great time, and we enjoyed it. And but when I came back as president, I had been out of college. I went to work in Jackson, worked 5 years there as a coach and a teacher in Chastain Junior High School. And then I went to Mac Adams up in Untitled County as principal of the school and stayed 1 year. Howard Cleveland was president of Belhaven, and I had known him a long time, and he asked me to come back. And I served as director of admissions at Belhaven, and traveled and recruited for him. And then I was elected president of the college. Mr. Fortenberry, who was president here at the time, he was dean of men when I was a student here, so I really knew most of the people on the campus. And when I came as president in January of 1954, I was 34 years old, and here I am, president of a community college, but I happen to know the people. It just wouldn't happen that way today. It just wouldn't happen, but it turned out all right because I had a lot of on-job training, and I stayed 29 and a half years on campus, and saw all kinds of changes take place. This was my first office when I came to Co-Lin. And Co-Lin at the time had a lot of needs. It wasn't, the facilities had not been kept up, but it wasn't a financial problem. It was, I guess, a conservative point of view of the president and the board not wanting to do things or spend money, and they had money. And one of the first big problems I had was getting the board to do anything. And finally, I loaded them into vans, some of them that would go. And I carried them to Hines and to Northwest and to different schools and showed them what was going on. And, I had that solved my problem. They ready to go and spend money as long as we have money. And so we began to make changes on this campus. And those changes brought the college to where it is today.
I went to Co-Lin to get an education because it was the first school that sent me an acceptance letter. After I had enrolled, here come the others. Well, couldn't go there. And Daddy said, don't come home without a piece of paper. So I had to do what I had to do. So I did. And the experience was real good in the classroom. Only two negative things, if you could call them negative, that ever happened. And I considered attention getting. Every day I would go in the union, and in those days, my lunch was a bacon, lettuce, tomato sandwich. a bag of corn chips, and a fountain drink, which cost me $2. And so one day I was sitting, and this group of guys came by, and they shifted my table, and my drink wasted over. And so they went out the door laughing about it. But the lady behind the counter came over, and she replaced what I had. So it wasn't nothing for me to get upset about, because I still had my lunch, you know. And she cleaned off the table, and so that's okay. She's gonna give me another lunch, so I did. And so I just sat there, and those are only two, I say, incidents of negativity that I found there. It was a lot of good times. I was the French club, as I said, was real good. I worked a little while on the yearbook staff and enjoyed that. The graduation came in May. I was somewhat hesitant about that. My parents were the only people of color there, of course. Our term was filled, and Dr. Timms was the president. But when he first came to Co-Lin, he invited me to his office, and we had a conversation on how was I enjoying Co-Lin and what have. I had no problems, you know, other than just that one class that, you know, they told me I wasn't supposed to be there. I really didn't have no problem in anybody's class. And if I had problems, if I messed up on a grade or something, the teacher, the instructor, always would pull me aside and said, "You need to come and let me help you with this." Oh, you know, I need to get up out of here. I need to go and let somebody help me. Okay, so I did. And so at graduation, it was such, I think I cried the whole time. When they called my name, I was so elated because, you know, in our term it's still the same. So, you know, a paint job old, but when I went back for homecoming back in October, I had to go there and sit, and I saw me walking across the stage. So by the time I came up on that end of the stage to get over here where Dr. Timms was to hand me my diploma, he was making a statement, and he asked my parents to stand up. And he commended them. Such a good child that they had me. Because I came and I did what I had to do. And he enjoyed having me on campus. And everybody gave them a round of applause, a standing ovation, in fact. And so then he handed me my diploma, and I went back and sat down. So those were the days. And they invited me back 20 years later, which was 30 years ago. And I did a presentation for Black History Month. And I had a lot of the younger persons who came up to me and said, "How did you make it? You didn't get angry? You didn't get mad? You know, I couldn't have did that." I said, "Well, you do what you have to do." And there were a lot of compliments, and I felt real good because I had done what I was supposed to do. I made friends while I was there, and I left. And I never forgot about Co-Lin.
Co-Lin is one of the rocks that holds this whole community together. The growth, the improved facilities, the magnitude of the influence that Co-Lin has grown on our whole community. Of course, you know, not only the physical plant changes, but also the environment of the school. It has grown from a campus that had a lot of people living on it to a more complex it's extended its tentacles out more in the community than it did then. We've got more of our faculty living in Brookhaven. We've got more of our faculty living in other areas that that reach out a little bit further and influence the whole a bigger geographic location than it did when I was first came here.
All right, my memory growing up in northeast Mississippi, we were in a rural area, and of course everyone else was rural area. I grew up during the Depression days, so to speak, in the 30s, and on a farm. We did not have electricity, we did not have running water, of course, but that was the case of most every family in the community in which I lived in. And we got along well. We raised most of our food on the farm, and was able to survive and do well under the circumstances. Well, I was a skinny youngster and enjoyed athletics, basketball. I lived and died on the basketball court. I went to a school that played basketball, Wheeler, and we were very successful. I was only one of 5 left in my class because of drafting in World War II volunteering. When I graduated from high school, they gave me an early diploma because they knew I was going in the service. I was 18 on November 7th, 1944, and 3 weeks later I was already at Camp Shelby. And got a few weeks off to go back and kind of finish up high school and play basketball. And back on the basketball situation, in 1943-44, we got 3rd in the state at my school. Some 600 high schools in the state, and there was no division then. Everyone played in the same tournament.
During that period of time, we wasn't welcome. And I would come across campus and meet my instructor or something like that. They would find a bird or plane to look at rather than say good morning. And in my social study class, I remember that instructor, that teacher would say, she wouldn't say Negroes, she said Nigrets. And so it was so depressing. I before the last class day change, I transferred to welding so I could get on out, you know. And after a period of time, I don't remember exactly how long, but we were treated, I mean, like candy for about 2 weeks. We didn't know what was going on. And it was 6 of us selected to meet upstairs here in the administration building. Didn't know exactly what it was about, but it was civil rights workers came from Atlanta, I believe, the black and the white, and they wanted to know exactly how we were being treated. We couldn't, I played band, all percussion, bass, clarinet, alto, tenor sax, and I couldn't get in the band here. Nobody could play football, that type of thing. So when we met with those civil rights workers, with Dr. Timms, Mr. Hunter, and Mr. Lewis, I believe, and we spilled the beans. So the following year, we got a chance to get in the band or whatever, you know, because I think the federal money gonna be cut off. They hadn't done that. So down there in Welling, I had a great instructor, Mr. Burt, very wonderful person. And I graduated there and went to the Gulf Coast for 6 years. And Dr. Tim called me back up here for a job interview. I didn't have a clue. I don't remember even filling out an application. I got a chance to stay here 37 years. I love Co-Lin. When I left in 69, I said I'd never come back. In 70. But the good Lord had a different plan for that and made it wonderful for me. A wonderful place.
In 1972, my husband and I were having lunch downtown, and at the table next to us were two educators who turned to me. I knew them both well, and they turned to me and said, "We're starting Copiah-Lincoln Community College in Natchez." Those days it was Copiah-Lincoln Junior College, and we need you. And I looked at my husband, and he looked at me like, "It's up to you." And so I was the first person hired for Co-Lin Natchez. Co-Lin Natchez inherited some faculty from the University of Southern Mississippi Natchez branch that was headquartered, of course, in Hattiesburg. But we had an outstanding superintendent of schools here, Gilbert McLaurin, and he wanted his teachers to have their masters and more. He was all for education. And so he brought professors into Natchez from University of Southern Mississippi, from Ole Miss, from everywhere, Alcorn, anywhere that he could get the good ones. And they would come in once a week, and we would have class from 4 to 8 with a 30-minute supper break. And this was done year in, year out. And it was free because he had money from foundations, International Paper Foundation for one, and they paid for us to go to school and earn graduate credit. And so the school, that developed into the University of Southern Mississippi having a Natchez branch for freshmen and sophomores, and then that grew to juniors and seniors. It was quite small, but it was effective, and the professors came and went by air or by car from Hattiesburg, and some of them lived here because they were hired full-time, but it worked. And so the powers that be in the Mississippi legislature and with the state institutions of higher learning, that board, they decided that it was not correct for University of Southern Mississippi to be offering those classes when 35 miles away, Alcorn State University was offering those classes. So they made a plan for Alcorn to take over the first 2 years, really to take over the whole thing. And the way they did that was to take away the freshman and sophomore levels from University of Southern Mississippi so that those students who were matriculating could go ahead and finish their junior and senior years. But within a 2-year pattern, then that would be no more, and then it would be reinstalled by Alcorn State University. That was the thinking. No plan, nothing official yet. And so the Board of Supervisors, Adams County Board of Supervisors, heard about this, and they went to Copiah-Lincoln in Wesson and said, "Would you come over to Natchez and offer the freshman and sophomore classes, because we can't let 2 whole years worth of schooling go away. It's not fair to our constituency and our students who can't afford to live away and go to college." And so Copiah-Lincoln Board of Trustees agreed to do that. So they came in we were on the quarter system at that time. And so the quarter system was September, October, November, and then break, and then December, January, February, and then break. And so they came in that winter quarter, and that was right at the time that these two gentlemen, Bill Gore and Eddie Smith, were having lunch, and they worked for USM Natchez branch, and Eddie was the first one hired by Copiah-Lincoln to head up the Co-Lin Natchez, and it was called branch in those first years. And so Eddie is the one that I knew from other years here, a good friend. And so he said, "I need you to do public relations, and I need you to teach English, but it's not full time right now. We're getting it together." And I said, "Fine." And I went to Mr. McLaurin, who, wonderful person, and I told him what I had been offered. And he said, "Well, I don't think you should turn down an opportunity like this. If it doesn't work out, I'll always have a job for you." What a compliment.
In July of 2002, we went to Simpson County and asked the supervisors for an increase in millage, and they weren't giving us a lot at that time. And so Mr. Womack was the chairman of that board. And I had Mr. Tanner with me. I had the trustees from Simpson County with me. Anyway, we had made our presentation and got ready to leave, and we were headed out the door. And I typically am going to be the last one out the door. and I shook hands with the Board of Supervisors, went across there, and this elevated platform up here, sitting down. And so I made my way down the line, and Mr. Womack was the last person I shook hands with, who was chairman. He was at the end next to the door. Every year that we'd gone, they would ask, when are you going, well, for the last few years anyway, they'd ask, when are you going to build a center in Simpson County? When are you going to open, no, when are you going to have day classes? When you have day classes. And I would explain to them, we can't have day classes without having some place to have a center, or with teachers here, full-time teachers. We couldn't do it otherwise. So he didn't ask it that year. He didn't ask. Nobody else asked. And so I got to Mr. Womack, shook his hand, I looked at him, and I said, you didn't ask that question today. He said, what question is that? I said, the one about us having a center here. He said, well, when are you? So Mr. Tanner and I had talked about this prior to the meeting and pretty much designed or mapped out a strategy that we could build a campus there if they would give us full millage, which was about an increase of 3 or 4 meals, 3 meals, I think. So, which is a commitment on their part. We have to do that. And so I said, you didn't ask a question. He said, well, what question is that? I said, the one about when we're going to have that classes here. And he said, well, what's the question? Or what, why don't you? Why don't you? When are you? And I said, if the board will give us full millage, we will do it. We'll build a campus here. We'll build a campus center here. So he looked down the road. I saw some of the supervisors, facial expressions and all. And he said, well, why don't we just take a poll here and see how they feel about that? Every one of them indicated, yeah, we'll give you full millage if you'll have a center here. And so I said, would you be willing for some of you to meet with us over the next few months to plan what we need to do to build that center? Because there were a lot of questions about whether or not. He said, sure. Well, only 2 could meet, because if you had 3, that means you got a quorum, which means it's got to be a public meeting. We want it to be private. So 2 of them met with us, the vice chair and then another one typically, met with us for 2-3 months talking about where it was going to be. We finally decided halfway between Mendenhall and McGee. That's a long story too, but it's a political thing, about whether it's going to be in my town or my town, So it's halfway between. It's 5 miles between each one, something like that. So we had got the ball rolling, and they pledged it. Our board came back and made the commitment that we'll do it. So all the signatures in the right place from the Board of Supervisors and the Board of Trustees of Co-Lin. The rest was just a matter of working through the process.
I think 2 of the events that really affected Co-Lin the most during my time were Hurricane Katrina and 9/11. So thinking back on 9/11, I was actually at a college fair at Mendenhall High School when the first plane hit the first tower. And the thing that stands out to me is there were military recruiters there as well as college recruiters, and all their phones started ringing. So we knew something was going on. We were either at war or something had happened. So the counselor at Mendenhall, Dixie Everett, called us into her office and said, y'all got to see this. Something's going on. So, of course, at first everybody thought, maybe it was just an accident, and then the second plane hit. So we knew, and I guess that's really the first time. I had a van load of Trailblazers with me that day, and we were all over there, and everybody was scared. And it's the first time that I really remember being scared on American soil that somebody had attacked us at home. So the feelings of, let's just get these kids home and I want to get home to my family was huge. And I think that's the way everybody felt. It was kind of a somber ride on the way home. And Co-Lin actually canceled classes that day. So everybody, of course, was glued to the television just to see what was going to happen next. And with Hurricane Katrina, a totally different story on that, but yet sort of the same. We left knowing that we were going to be off of school for a couple of days because we knew it was a monster hurricane in the Gulf. And Of course, we had all grown up hearing about Hurricane Camille and the damage from that, and really the effects that Wesson had from it, with losing power and how bad the winds were and all. So, we expected a storm. We expected to be without power, but we had no idea what was about to hit us, or that the college would actually be closed for a couple of weeks instead of a couple of days. So we were at the point we had just finished late registration. And after Katrina, we opened registration back up, and we got a lot of students that came in that were displaced. So you think about people losing their homes, losing their belongings, but you never really thought about them losing their school and their ability to go to school. So we did enroll a lot of students after that. We kept a lot of students after that, and a lot that still live in this area. Think about like the trauma. I remember a girl coming in to withdraw from school after that happened that said, I can't drive down because the trees are leaning and I just feel like they're going to fall on my car. So things that, the stress and the anxiety that you really don't think about with people that really did linger on. So we had some of that. I was a sponsor of Phi Theta Kappa at the time, so we immediately did roadblocks for it. We went into gear and decided that we would adopt a school on the coast that was hit, and it was St. Martin Schools, which is public school in Jackson Public Schools. And we took school supplies down. And at this point it had been, probably 3 weeks since Katrina, but things still looked like it had just hit. So when you're driving down I-10 and you see mattresses that are in the trees, kids' toys that are on the side of the road, and I think that made a huge impact not only on me but on the students as well. It was a somber ride. So delivered those, and then we went to Ocean Springs, and we put together a booklet of, you would drive up and there would be swimming pools there full of stuff and no houses. So things that just really, I think, affect you as a person, probably something that affected me more than anything during my time here, and I think the students as well.
On the positive side, there was significant growth fairly quickly after I became president, which was in 2008. And there were a lot of great things that happened because of that, the enrollment growth. But the downside was really the fundamental thing that happened right after I became president was the recession. The Great Recession started in the fall of 2008. So just 3 months after I started, we started having budget cuts. People started losing their job. Parents got concerned about sending their kids off to school. So what happened is enrollment started growing to the point that we were growing 10-15% a year. And it really kind of topped out in probably 3 or 4 years after that. So that significant enrollment growth was a great time on one hand, but it was still a little bit of a challenge in another regard, because the finances of the college at the time were really suffering because of the budget cuts that we were experiencing from the state. We had just opened the Simpson County Center in, I think, 2005. And along with those students who were returning to be retrained, because of lost jobs and industry cutbacks and those kind of things, we had that expansion in Simpson County. So we were seeing students, a lot more students than probably, let me say it like this, I don't think that many of those students would have come to Wesson because of the convenience of a campus there in Simpson County. Our enrollment started going up. The same was true in Natchez. There were some very large industries that closed about that time, including international paper companies. So we had some enrollment growth because of that. And because of those things, we had to add things like new instructors. We had to hire new adjunct instructors, new part-time instructors, full-time instructors. We did create some other career and technical programs. Some of those came a little bit later on. But those were really the result of that enrollment.
I think the biggest obstacle that I've faced has been dealing with COVID. Obviously, I didn't study how to handle a global pandemic in my doctoral classes. Never had training in how to lead an institution. But I will tell you that as a leader, people take their cues from you. And so you have to hold your head up high, and you have to smile, and you have to move forward and try to make people understand that we're going to get through this, and we will get through it. But it has been a challenge. trying to make sure that we were providing a safe learning environment for our students and a safe working environment for our instructors. It's been a challenge all the way around, from athletics to serving students in our residence halls to the cafeteria to even welcoming guests on the campus. But I am very proud of the job that our team has done. We have developed protocols and practices and purchased safety PPE and done a phenomenal job. And relatively speaking, I think we've done quite well to manage and mitigate COVID-19.
The community colleges have done more to help educational level of the counties. And see, this school was started by Copiah and Lincoln County. That's where the name comes. Copiah and Lincoln is Co-Lin. And then we added Simpson County and Franklin County, then Jefferson County, and last county was Adams County after I came here. So there's a lot of development. This street that goes through the campus right here, that used to be the highway from Brookhaven to Wesson. And then they put in 51, old 51 here, and then they put in another 51 out there, and now 55. So, you know, all of those have developed around the history of the school. There's no way to evaluate what the value to this 7-county area is, but you can just bet your bottom dollar that it's one of the best things that ever happened to it.